Hello, thank you for stopping by my kitchen. You are very welcome as always. Today I'm making Bakewell Tart slices. It's my 2nd year anniversary of Sheila's kitchen. I cannot believe I've been doing this for 2 years now. And I wanted to make something traditional for my 2nd year anniversary because I've always made something traditional for my anniversaries. So, no, I've only had one other anniversary, but my first ever video was butterfly cakes, which was, yeah, that was special to me because I used to make those when I was a child, so yes. Anyway, this video I'm going to be making Bakewell slices. This is my own recipe. I've made I've taken various recipes and made my own recipe from them. Simply because I wanted to do almond slices, but they're more of a frangipane, and I found them, although they were very delicious, they were very heavy, and I wanted more of a light sponge on the top rather than a heavy frangipane. So this is more like a Bakewell tart with the sponge on the top, so I've called them Bakewell Tart slices. So first we need to butter our tin, grease our tin. This tin is 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres. If you want to make a bigger Bakewell tart, I would advise you to have make double the recipe and have 2 tins this size, because as you probably know, Bakewell tart has pastry on the bottom, and I will not be baking blind. I will be putting the pastry in and putting the cake on the top and put it in the oven with the pastry raw. I'm not a faffy cooker. I can't be faffing about with baking blind. So the fact that it's only 20 by 20, there is no need to bake blind before cooking the Bakewell tart, if you get what I mean. If you were to double the recipe to make a big one, I mean, this is big enough for us, but we're only a small family, so if you had a bigger family and you were to double the recipe and make a big one, you would need to bake blind. So you would need to put your pastry into the oven to cook with some beans or rice on top for about 10 minutes, then take it out, which, no, that's not a big deal, but then you've got to wait for it to cool down before putting the jam and the sponge on top. So that is the reason I do not want to faff about with baking blind. So 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres and buttered. And we'll start with making the pastry. So we're going to start the pastry by sieving 6 ounces of plain flour into a bowl. Then we're going to rub in 3 ounces of cold butter. Just break that butter up with a knife before rubbing it in. You can do this bit in a food processor if you want to, but I like to just rub it in with my fingers. So we want to just rub the butter and the flour between the fingers until it resembles fine breadcrumbs. There, that's perfect. To this I'm just going to add a small pinch of salt. Let's give it a mix around again. Now in my jug, all I've got is cold water. I'm just making a well in the flour and butter and just putting a little bit in and mixing it round. Another little bit, mixing it round until it starts to clump. I just think I need a tiny bit more. I can't tell you exactly how much water to put in. It's this consistency we need, because the amount you use will depend on how warm your kitchen is, what the air temperature is, what the humidity is, all sorts of things like that. Anyway, when it's clumped like this, we'll just go in with our hands and push it together. Why is there always a bit that escapes? Every single time. perfect. So set the bowl aside and bring in some flour and flour the board you're going to be rolling it out on. At this point, I need to push it into a square because it's going into a square tin. It's good to get it into a square to start with. So when we roll it out, it knows what shape it's going to be. There, and I'll just roll out the 2 ways to keep it into a square. And this is the exact amount of pastry you need for that 20 centimetre tin. Keep an eye on your tin, remembering it's got to go up the sides too. Just put my tin in. If you need to put any more flour underneath while you're rolling, so it doesn't stick, do. Is that going to be big enough? I think I need to make it slightly bigger to make sure it comes up the sides. Slightly bigger again. I'll probably make it too big. There, we'll give that a go. So just roll your pastry around your rolling pin and just flop it onto your tin. And then we can bring it over this way a bit more, I think. Push it into the base first so all the corners and the edges are in. We'll tidy up the edges once we've got it all in. Push all the corners down. Don't want to be cutting the pastry off on the edges until we've got good corners. And if you have missed a bit, I mean, I don't think I've missed any today, but sometimes I do. We're going to be cutting this off, just making sure you can see, to even it up. So you would have a big bit there. So say that wasn't high enough, just pop that bit there. Don't stress. There's plenty of pastry to make it go. Try and tidy these up a bit with a knife, then we'll be pushing them with our fingers. I'm not using any of this pastry again, so I'm just throwing it randomly. I might put a tiny bit up here, look. I don't know if you can see it, maybe if I put it closer to camera. There's a tiny dip, just a teensy tiny dip. I'm just gonna pop that bit there, fill in that tiny dip. If you have a bigger dip, pop a bigger dip in. Pop a bigger dip in. Pop a bigger piece of pastry in. Just try and make this as tidy as possible. There, that's perfect. Like that. I need to wash my hands. I'll put you back up. So one quick tip while we're here. I want to get that in the fridge. I'll wash my hands afterwards. If you get flour on your hands after using pastry, you can just wipe the majority of it off with the flour. There, reasonably clean. So this will now go into the fridge for the time we are making the sponge for the top. Now we're going to start making the topping, but first I realised for the pastry I didn't give you the amounts in grams. So, and I'll check this for you. So 6 ounces of plain flour was 175 grams. 3 ounces of butter was 75 grams and a pinch of salt. That was all it was. I have written all the grams down now. I cook in ounces, you see, so I put the grams on separately. Well, mostly I cook in ounces unless I'm doing a recipe that's just grams, and then I use grams. But anyway, first of all we need to put our oven on, and I will read this out so I get this right. So it's 180 degrees Celsius for an electric oven, 170 if you've got a fan like me, 350, say that again, 350 if you're Fahrenheit or gas mark 4. So first we need to put 4 ounces or 100 grams of butter, and this is soft butter. For the pastry it needs to be cold straight out the fridge. For the sponge it needs to be soft so we can cream it, and just cream that up. Then we're going to add 4 ounces or 100 grams of caster sugar and cream that. Once that's creamed together, in my jug I have 2 eggs, and I'll just start whisking those, and then we're going to add those gradually. We're beating in after each gradual adding of the eggs so it doesn't curdle. There. I'll just scrape down the sides again. And I'm going to add some almond essence. I'm going to use just over half a teaspoon, but the amount you put in depends on how strong you want the almond, really. I'll do it over this jug in case it tips all over. That's a half a teaspoon, and just a tinsy-wincy bit more. I don't want a whole teaspoon. That'd be too much for me. There, that's perfect. And just whip that up too. Next we need to sieve in 3 ounces or 75 grams of self-raising flour and 1 ounce or 25 grams of ground almonds. The almonds might not all go through your sieve, but try, because it makes them a little bit finer. If you just press, you should be able to get most of them through. Makes a finer texture for the cake. Yeah, just a few little lumpy bits left, and then we're just going to fold that in. As always, make sure you've got all the flour from the bottom, especially with the ground almonds, because they're a bit heavier than an ordinary flour. I'll just scrape off my spoon to make sure there's no flour left on that. There, that's perfect. Now we need to get our pastry back from the fridge. My pastry all nice and cold. Before we put the sponge in, I'm going to put some raspberry jam in the bottom. You need to be quite generous with this jam. See how we go with that, and just spread it out to the corners. You want to make sure you get right up into these corners, so whoever gets a corner piece gets a lot of jam too. I think we're going to need more than that. There, that's about right. That's nearly half a jar I've used there. How big is my jar? That's 375 grams for this jar, so half of that I've used today. Oh, I am fussy about getting it in these corners, nice and even. And with this sponge, what you want to do is dollop it on all over the top, so we get it as even as we can. And just scrape the bowl and the spoons off so we get it all in. And I'm just going to go over and spread all this out with a knife again. Get into those corners. There. Once that's all even on top, just sprinkle it with flaked almonds. Now they do these in toasted too, these flaked almonds, but you don't want the toasted version, just the ordinary version, because they are on the top, so they are going to cook in the oven. You get them toasted already, they'll probably burn. Really, this is as much as you want. I like a lot. I like the almonds on top. A few strategically placed to fill in any of the gaps you might have. Remember, this is going to be cut into slices, so everybody needs to get a good amount of almonds on the top. Where are we missing there? Okay, so that's ready to go in the oven, and that will go in the oven for between 35 and 40 minutes. My cake's now had 37 minutes. I think it'll be done now. Let me show you this. Look at that, that is just perfect. So we'll leave this in the baking tin until it's very nearly cool. It will take a couple of hours because it's quite deep. And yes, I'll come back when it's cool, put it on the wire rack. When it's totally cool, I'll come back for a taste test, okay? I think I'll go and have my lunch in the meantime. It's been a couple of hours now and it's very nearly cool, just a little bit warm on the bottom. So to get it out of the tin, we're going to need 2 cooling racks. And what I'm going to do is turn one cooling rack upside down and put it on the top. And just flip it over, just making sure it's out. Yeah, that's all out. Take the tin off there. And then this one goes also upside down, so it's going to be the right way around when we've done it. Just put that on the top and flip over quickly. And there you have it. Out the baking tray in one piece, and that needs to cool off completely before we cut it. So here is the result of my Bakewell Tart slices. Oh, it's heavy. I could turn it around for you so you can see. So we've got the raspberry underneath, then the sponge, and then the flaked almonds on top, and all pastry underneath is cooked. So I've just cut it in half there, I'll put it back together so you can see, and I've just cut a slice off the edge there. Oh, that board's a bit heavy. And this is it on the plate. See if I can tilt it so you can see the raspberry jam, the sponge, the almonds on the top, and the pastry is nice and cooked underneath. So now for the taste test. The trouble is I always hate talking after I've had a mouthful of cake. Oh, so nice. Oh, I have a bit of the pastry on the edge. I do like the edge pieces. You know, some people make a sweet pastry for the bottom of this sort of thing. I just put a little bit of caster sugar in the pastry, but I think with the raspberry jam, it's sweet enough. Yes, you really don't need any sugar in that pastry. Very nice. I hope you've enjoyed this video, the 2nd anniversary of Sheila's Kitchen. Wow, I've been going for 2 years, can you believe that? If you've enjoyed the video, give me the thumbs up as usual, and if you do make the Bakewell Tart slices, I know you're going to love those. So yes, thumbs up unusual, and don't forget, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to my channel, it will help me immensely. Hope to see you again next time.